Over at BangTheBook.com, we are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. The NHL season starts tonight. There are 4 games on the docket. Parker Michaels has covered all 4 of them for us over at BangTheBook.com in his daily NHL picks and analysis piece. This is a must-read every single day. Nobody out there does it as good as Parker does in terms of people that actually publish their work. He keeps up with the projected goaltenders, all the injuries, recommended wagers, has ranges where he would play it up to or down to. It's a really tremendous resource, a great piece of information, and we are very, very lucky to have it over at BangTheBook.com. Also over there right now, my thoughts on tonight's AL wildcard game between the Rays and the A's, although we will talk about it here on today's show. Also series previews for Twins, Yankees, and Cardinals, Braves. Nationals, Dodgers will come your way later on today. We got tons of football content for the week. My college football power ratings, Danny Borges' NFL model projections will come out either tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll have lots of free picks in college football and the NFL for you as well. As you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. 2 guests on the program here today. We start things off with professional handicapper Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. Bryan, how's it going today, man?
Everything's going great. Excitement for the start of the NHL season. You mentioned Parker Michaels. I read his stuff all the time. I know he's had some health problems in the past. I hope he has a healthy season. I enjoy reading everything he does, and he does a terrific job over there.
Yeah, he definitely does. And for those that don't know, you're a Vegas Golden Knights season ticket holder, so I'm sure you're excited about tonight's matchup. Any lean you want to throw out there for us?
I may end up betting the dog. Sorry to say. I'm a fan of certain teams, but when it comes down, I'm a fan of money more than anything. And I think it's a little bit overpriced right now. I usually like to go against teams. For example, St. Louis with the trophy last year, I like to go against teams that are having an award ceremony, that kind of thing. So I'm looking at road dogs tonight, I guess. That's what I'm taking a look at on the smaller card, but we'll see if any of them make my client card. But, it all comes down to money when it comes down to the teams I root for. Money is more important. I got to pay the bills.
Well, let's see if the road dog is on your mind here in the American League wildcard game tonight out in Oakland. It'll be Charlie Morton and Sean Manaea as the Rays take on the A's. This line in the minus 130 to minus 135 range across the board here. Of course, Brewers backers, I know there were a lot of us out there last night, just thought that price was a little bit too high. And, you're right there. You got Josh Hader on the mound. You got to get 6 outs to finish it off, and he's unable to do it. Nationals advance. They'll play the Dodgers. Once again, I'll write that series preview up over at BangTheBook.com later on today. But what about tonight's wild card game, Bryan? How do you sort of see this one playing out?
Yeah, it was interesting from yesterday. I was kicking myself halfway through the game because I thought there was some value on Milwaukee. I didn't play the game at all. And then obviously it's got to go the full 9 innings. And they didn't hold on to the lead. And I kind of wanted Milwaukee to win. I'm a big underdog guy when it comes to cities. And although Washington hasn't had a lot of success in the playoffs, but I like the teams that don't get there very often. And I would have liked to have seen that. But tonight's game, an unfortunate situation is I want both these teams to win. I like both these teams. They're both low payroll type of teams. Neither team has a lot of success. I mean, Tampa's had good success for where they're at, but they play in a division with the Red Sox and the Yankees. So it's always a grind for Tampa Bay to make it to the playoffs. And here we are. One of them's going to be eliminated in 27 outs. And I hate that part of baseball, the play-in game, that kind of thing. It's frustrating, but that's the rules right now, and we got to live with them. I haven't put up my play yet, but it will be on Tampa Bay. A lot of it comes down to Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton, you look over his he faced the A's twice this year. His game score is 65-78. Manaea hasn't faced Tampa Bay this year, but he's done well, 61 in his 3 career starts against Tampa Bay. And when I mention game scores, I'm talking about league average is 50. So anything above 50 is a player you want to back. But Tampa Bay's hit lefties pretty well, 32 and 25, very similar to their 64-41. But Oakland has lived off of lefties this year, 35 and 14, as opposed to 62 and 51. So I think Charlie Martin could go deep in this game, a righty against this Oakland team, and I'm getting plus money here on one of the best road teams in baseball, Tampa Bay, 48 and 33 on the season. I really wish both these teams weren't playing each other, but they are, and I find some value on Tampa Bay here.
Yeah, I find some value on Tampa Bay here as well. I do like the first 5 a little bit more than the full game, just because, I mean, we saw it last night. You know, sometimes these bullpens can be a little bit finicky in the postseason. You know, it all depends on reliever usage, when guys are deployed. Hey, Milwaukee had it set up perfectly last night. Being able to use Hader in those 2 high-leverage innings, he doesn't get the job done, and not all of it entirely his fault. The hit by pitch, very questionable. The blooper that fell in center field that kind of, you know, kept the rally going, then the ground ball single, and, of course, everything that happened with that. So, you know, again, sometimes some crazy things just happen in the late innings here. I do like Morton against the A's, as you mentioned. I mean, Morton's a guy, even with the juiced ball here this year, allowed fewer home runs in 194 and 2/3 innings than he allowed last season in 167 innings. Throws high fastballs with premium velocity. Oakland was a bottom 5 offense and weighted on base average on fastballs up in the zone at 94+ miles per hour. So I think Morton matches up really well against this Oakland lineup. As you mentioned as well, Oakland very right-handed heavy. The thing that I kind of worry about and waffle back and forth a little bit on this game is the Rays did have the second highest strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching this year. Now, Sean Manaea, only 5 starts, not as you would probably expect a guy like that to struggle in a situation like this because he didn't face the greatest of lineups in September, hasn't pitched all year long. I do like Oakland's bullpen quite a bit, so that's why I'd probably look first 5 as opposed to full game. But, you know, one of the things I will point out here, just in general, as we sort of transition to talking about the other 2 series that we knew about going into yesterday's wildcard game, the managers play such a big role here at this time of the year because they really do have to put their players in a position to succeed. Whether or not the players execute or not, you know, remains to be seen. But managerial decisions are very, very important here. And I think that really is going to be on display here in this series between the Twins and the Yankees because you have 2 iffy starting rotations that if you leave them out there too long against these offenses, they can get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, they definitely can. You mentioned my wife even asked me, she goes, who's the Twins' number 1 starter? And I said, well, it's Barrios, but, you know, they've had other guys that have pitched well at times. But, yeah, either team is, you know, obviously now with the starter coming back from the Yankees, who's really their number 1, came back late in the season. He's looking really good. But, yeah, neither team is really loaded from a starting pitcher standpoint, but I like the bullpens on both these teams. Minnesota, as the year went on, continued to add players. They have good players in the minors who were good for them last year that just didn't make the team this year. And that tells you that their bullpen is much stronger this year than it was in the past. 2 teams who rely on home runs. So anytime you find teams that rely on the home runs, I think it opens up a lot of value on taking the underdogs in these games because the variety of the game scores is going to be different depending on who gets the home run. You know, one night you may not get any home runs, next night you get 5. So the variable in that regard opens up a lot of chances to make some money playing the underdog. I think that's going to be my general thought going into the series is because neither team basically plays the National League ball the old National League ball where you just try to get a guy on base, steal a base, bunt him over, that kind of thing. Neither one of these teams do that. So whoever hits the homers is going to win. So I think there's going to be a value on playing the underdogs here, and that's the way I'm going to look at it. Obviously, every game is different. You have to look at the pitching matchups and how long they'll be going. Obviously, it's a little bit different, as you pointed out, in the playoffs where during the regular season, you know, you can afford to lose a few games. So if you get a pitcher who doesn't get off to a great start, they can keep him in there. You know, Scherzer went yesterday. I didn't understand why he pitched Scherzer in that game. I know he probably deserved it from his career standpoint, but he hadn't been pitching well, the last couple of months, and puts a whole season on him. It's something I wouldn't have done. But that's the way I'm going to look at that series so far. We'll see how it goes from a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, when I wrote up my preview and actually was able to put in the odds, it was Yankees minus 245 at BetOnline. I'm sure other places were in a fairly similar range at the open. Now it's Yankees minus 215, which implies about a 68% likelihood that they win this series. I still think that's a little bit high. I certainly liked it more when you were getting the plus $2 price that was out there. I will look at this from a game-by-game standpoint. And, really, as you mentioned, the Yankees have the better bullpen between these two teams, but the rotations really aren't that far apart, and both of these offenses are pretty good. Now, of course, when you look at the Minnesota Twins here, and, we talked about this last year with the Indians. I know I wrote about this in my preview when they played Houston. You do have to factor in that, the Twins got to beat up on really bad pitching for 57 games within the division. Now, of course, New York had the same luxury for 38 games with the Blue Jays and the Orioles. But, when you look at the Twins here, they were 9th in OPS at 761 and 6th in slugging percentage at 443 against teams that were 500 or better. Against teams with losing records, they were 1st in OPS by a large margin and 1st in slugging percentage. So they did take advantage of the bad teams that they played, and specifically the bad pitching staffs that they played. The Yankees, on the other hand, were 3rd in OPS against both of them, against teams that had a 500 or better record and also teams that had a losing record. So maybe there's some more consistency on the New York side, which is why I would expect them to advance. But with the price that's out there, I think maybe a small lean of a position on the Twins, expecting that the Yankees probably do win the series, just not 68% of the time like the line indicates.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned beating up on the bad teams. That's what the Cleveland Indians have done the last few years. And that's one of the reasons I didn't mind Cleveland not winning that division. I would rather see somebody out there. The excitement in Minnesota is going to be so much more than it would be in Cleveland, because Cleveland's been there, done that, and this was not a very, in my opinion, not a playoff team in Cleveland. So I didn't mind them losing out to Minnesota. Sure, I'm an Indians fan, but for the betterment of baseball, I'd like to see a different team in there. And I just hope Minnesota makes it the series and doesn't get swept, because that would look terrible for the division as a whole and for the city of Minnesota, because the Vikings are a team right now that doesn't look like they're going to be going as deep in the playoffs as they would like, with some problems there for the football team. So rooting for the Twins. We'll see what happens.
Well, and one last point I'll make about this series is that I think both of these front offices are very, very smart. Obviously, the Yankees have more financial ability than the Twins and really than most teams in baseball. But Brian Cashman's done a great job sort of redefining what the identity is of this Yankees team. They're actually developing a lot from within now. Yeah, they still go out there and get some big free agents now and then, but a lot of guys homegrown, a lot of guys that they've just had big player development wins with guys like Gio Urshela. So the Yankees are a lot different than they used to be. The Twins also very smart. And I was extremely impressed with first-year manager Rocco Baldelli in some of those higher leverage situations, using Taylor Rogers for multi-inning saves, pulling starters early in the game, going to some of his better relievers in the middle innings in those leverage situations. This is going to be a really fascinating series from a managerial standpoint, because I think Aaron Boone is good at that. I think Rocco Baldelli is really good at that. So this is going to be a good series in terms of, if you're somebody who likes the in-game decision-making, the nerd type of stuff like I do, I guess should be a really good series here in the ALDS. And again, I will have a preview over at BangTheBook.com for whoever the Houston Astros wind up playing, whether it's the Rays or the A's. But Brian, one more series to talk about here, the NLDS between the Cardinals and the Braves. And I'm really interested to get your take on this series. Braves $1.35 favorite, Cardinals plus 115 on the take back here. Miles Mikolas, Dallas Keuchel, the pitching matchup for Game 1. Jack Flaherty will go in Game 2 and in Game 5 if necessary. What are you seeing from this series here between these two teams?
Yeah, the big advantage is Flaherty right now. There hasn't been a better pitcher in the second half of the season. He's been untouchable. Not big fans of either starter going in game one. So I will look at it a little bit more. I may end up with an over ticket, depending on, some things. We'll do a little bit more handicapping. But, this is a coin flip series. And who would have thought that halfway through the season that St. Louis had really struggled. Just had not played nearly as well as we've seen in the past out of the Cardinals. But they picked it up, and they go into the playoffs as one of the hotter teams. I'm not a big believer. A lot of people will look at who ends up going into the playoffs hot, who ends up backing into the playoffs, that kind of thing. To me, it's like a totally different it's obviously a totally different season when you go to the playoffs as you do in the regular season. But a lot of teams are able to rest players, and we see many teams in Major League Baseball giving a rest to a lot of their players coming down towards the playoffs, especially teams like the Dodgers. They had a different lineup out there every night. One thing that concerned me out of Houston was they usually kept the same guys in the lineup all the time. They had a few guys that they would try out there. They didn't play a whole lot, but for the most part, Houston was a team that played the same lineup pretty much all the time, whereas the Dodgers played their entire bench. I think that will be an advantage for the Dodgers come playoff time because of that. The bench guys will be a little bit fresher, and that's something you always want to keep account on because of all the pitching changes in the playoffs, going from lefty to righty, all the pitch hit situations that you don't usually see in the regular season. I'm rooting for the Braves here. It's been a while since the Braves have been good. Rooting for them here, but full respect for both teams, good organizations, probably great organizations when it comes down to it. And we'll see which one can go up and advance here. But I think the line's pretty much what I thought it would be. I think there's slight value on Atlanta, but at this point, I didn't play any futures, so I'm just going game to game in this grouping.
I'm going to look the other way here. I'm going to look at St. Louis as the team that has a little bit of value. And, again, you look at game one here coming up tomorrow night, and you've only got Dallas Keuchel a minus 130 or so favorite. So it's not like that's an unwinnable game for St. Louis. If they steal that one and they've got Flaherty in game two, they've got a very good chance to go up 2-0. So I like St. Louis at the plus 115 price. Again, if they win one of these two games in Atlanta, this series is very likely to go 5 games. You get Flaherty again on full rest in game 5, plus 115 with St. Louis with Flaherty against anybody right now. Probably a pretty good bet to make. The thing about this series is this, and I agree with the Braves being favored. Both of these teams are very solid across the board. The difference is the Braves have some star power in guys like Ronald Acuna, in guys like Freddie Freeman. The Cardinals' best position player, Paul Goldschmidt, had kind of a down year by his standards. So both of these teams are solid and consistent, but the Braves appear to be a little bit flashier. So I think that a lot of people will gravitate towards the Braves because of that. But I think St. Louis here, again, probably getting 2 Flaherty starts in what would be a 5-game series. I think the plus 115 price tag, a pretty decent look there for them. So I guess we'll see how this one plays out. And I certainly don't dislike your approach here of going on a game-by-game basis. But, Brian, before we transition away from baseball, what's your World Series pick, and who do they wind up beating there in the final round?
Well, unfortunately, I've got to be chalk heavy here. I think the Dodgers and the Astros are the 2 best teams, along with the Yankees, to me, would be the 3rd best team. But, Houston over the Dodgers, and that's interesting. I'm a subscriber to The Athletic, which is a tremendous source of written material. I would recommend everybody pay for that. They have 7 baseball writers that broke down the teams to go to the World Series. All 7 took Houston to win. 6 of them took Houston to beat the Dodgers. 1 took Houston to beat St. Louis. I hate to be chalk heavy, and I hate to agree with everybody else, but after watching these teams all season long, these are the 2 best teams, and anything can happen in a short series. We've seen it before where the better team will get swept in a 4-game series against a bad team. It happens. But if I had to put any money on it, which I haven't, like I said, I haven't played any series, I think it's Houston beating the Dodgers in the World Series, and unfortunately, It's the same old, and I'd prefer other teams to get in it. But if you're looking for the best teams, those are the two best teams.
Yep, I completely agree with you. I've got Houston over the Dodgers here as well. I mean, the pitching depth for both of those teams is just scary. And the position player depth, very strong for both of those teams too. And, I prioritize A.J. Hinch as well over Dave Roberts and what the Dodgers are able to put out there. So, I'll take Houston over the Dodgers here in the World Series as well. As we transition over to the football side here, this part of Bang the Book Radio brought to you by the Trends app, TRNDS. The last time that I tried to validate a betting idea using historical trends, it's a struggle. There's so much information out there, a lot of historical information, a lot of head-to-head information, especially here with conference play going on in college football. It's difficult and it's time-consuming to pull together some of these numbers, how teams do coming off of a loss, how they do head-to-head against a certain opponent, how do they do in certain weather conditions or with a specific spread range after a bye, so on and so forth. So many trends that are out there, and fortunately, the Trends app simplifies access to powerful data, and it allows users to self-source their own queries and also to share meaningful sports betting trends all from their mobile phone. Don't just be a consumer of stats, create your own views on the game. The Trends app, TRNDS, is available for free on the App Store for iOS users. However, they're giving away a free month of the premium subscription tier to the first 100 users who sign up. And the way to do that is to go to www.trends-sports. Again, trnds-sports.com/bangthebook to sign up. Again, you can identify new betting angles. You don't have to scour box scores or read through Twitter or anything like that. You can set up your own queries and also share them from your mobile phone. So again, the first 100 users to sign up at www.trends-sports.com/bangthebook will get a free month of the premium subscription tier. And once again, that's the Trends app, TRNDS. Bryan, as we look at college football here, as I mentioned, we're going through conference play here now, so a lot of familiarity between these two teams. We've talked on our previous two shows of Bang the Book Radio about different power ratings adjustments that we've made. Were there some big ones for you here going from week 5 to week 6?
Not really. They're pretty much settled in at this point. There's a few that moves a little bit, but no, for the most part, Nebraska, I guess, down a little bit. Ohio State up. Ohio State's just been amazing to me, how good this team has been. We knew it would be good offensively, but the defense has just been terrific. And but no, for the most part, overall, at this point of the season, you should be pretty much on within a couple of points of every game for your power ratings based on what we've seen so far. We've got enough data points. One thing I like to do, and I've heard Brad Powers talk about this also, is every couple of weeks, I think he says he does it every month, but go back and rejudge the teams that you originally saw, because I'm going through some of my numbers here, and I said, you know what, I thought this team was going to be really good. They looked really good early in this one game, and they failed. Now the teams they played early on, I said, now I take a little bit off of them because they played some of these teams that we thought were going to be good, and after 3 or 4 data points have not turned out that way. So it's something to go back, and it's just a double check. To me, that's more valuable than changing on the week-to-week basis based on what happened the week before, because now we do have more data points, and you can go back and say, you know what, this team's better than I thought they were going to be, and give the teams that played them a little bit of a boost.
All right, so as we look at a couple of games here, and we'll focus specifically on the MAC, and we'll talk about a lot of games on tomorrow's show with Brad Powers, who you just mentioned there. But game 321-322 is a game I definitely wanted to pick your brain about, Ball State and Northern Illinois, because this is one of the biggest overlays in my power ratings. I actually have Northern Illinois a double-digit favorite in this game. Again, game 321-322. Northern Illinois opened a 6.5-point favorite. This line got bet down to 4.5. Now it got bet back up to 5. So we're kind of sitting there waiting to see what happens with this line the rest of the week. What do you think about this matchup here with the Huskies at home?
Yeah, it's from my perspective, I take a look at how the teams have done so far this year. Obviously, I'm looking at Phil Steele's game grades. Basically, Ball State is looking at roughly about an 82 maybe on the season combined. Northern Illinois is looking probably about an 80, 85 or so combined. So that would put it in the general range of what it's at right now, maybe a 6 or something like that for Northern Illinois. But I go back and I take a look at individual stats in these games, and I've been pretty impressed by Ball State. Now, when you take a look at the schedules, in FBS games, they played Indiana, Florida Atlantic, and NC State. Those teams are combined based on certain numbers, 99, whereas Northern Illinois played Utah, Nebraska, and Vanderbilt, which is about 105. So basically, Northern Illinois has played like a 6-point tougher schedule out of the FBS teams. But when I look at overall numbers, and this does include each team played one FCS goal, but I was pretty impressed by these Ball State numbers. Ball State on the season, offensive yards per play are up about 0.5, a half a yard each game, and that was playing Indiana, Florida Atlantic, and North Carolina State. Now, not great teams, but Indiana, I like Indiana. I think they're a top 40 team. NC State in that same regard, top 40, 50. Florida Atlantic's been a disappointment, but for them to play these teams is pretty impressive to have a plus yards per play situation, whereas in Northern Illinois is actually down a little bit. They're down about 1.3 yards per play. But I'm taking a look at the situation for Ball State defensively. They played those 4 games. They've allowed 6 passing touchdowns, but they picked the opponents off 6 times. That's pretty impressive for a middle-tier MAC team to be able to do that. Northern Illinois, on the other hand, has given up 5 touchdowns with only 1 interception. The passing rating for the teams, Ball State's 148, Northern Illinois is 127. So even though my number is showing slight Northern Illinois, looking at what Ball State has done, I can see some of the reason why some money has come in on Ball State here, open 6.5, now down to 5. So I'm going to lay off of this game. I think it's a good game to watch. I know I've talked in the past about how Northern Illinois plays for the conference games, so that might be one of the reasons why their numbers are a little bit disappointing. But I've been pretty impressed by Ball State, so I'm going to sit back, and I don't see an edge in this one, so I'll sit back and watch it.
Well, one thing that Kyle Hunter mentioned on Monday's show, Ball State 6th in the country in tempo, so they are moving quite a bit quicker here this year. So maybe the value in this game potentially on the total, where we have seen a move up from 53 to 55.5, as the Cardinals are playing a little bit quicker here over the course of the season. One more game I want to touch on here with you quickly. It was going to be Auburn and Florida. Got a listener request to talk about that with Brad Powers tomorrow, so we'll save that game for then. But 367, 368 here. It's a good game for us to talk about because this line has done nothing but move down. Western Michigan at Toledo. Toledo was a 4-point favorite at the open. Now it's anywhere from 1 to 2 out there, with Toledo a very short favorite in the Glass Bowl.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. Originally, I thought the line was right at about 4. Probably made it roughly 3.5, 4. And now we're seeing the lines going down. Actually, Pinnacle's at -1 now, -111. And we all know that Pinnacle and Bookmaker are the 2 sharp national books that the sharp money is at. So the money's coming in on Western Michigan. Somebody's looking to play Western. I faded Western Michigan as my play last week. It didn't look good from a scoring standpoint. I did get the cover, but Western Michigan, when you look at that game last week from a yardage standpoint, how the game played out, it was all turnovers that kept them getting off to that good start last week. Toledo's not the same Toledo teams as we've seen in the past, but I just think Western Michigan is a little overrated at this point. Like I said, this was one of the games that I really didn't have much of an edge on originally, but now as the week gets on, I'm probably going to take a look at this game because the line's a little bit cheap here, and Toledo playing in the Glass Bowl is always a strong home favorite here, and so that's what I'm leaning now. I need to find out why everybody's on Western Michigan. because last week I couldn't figure out why everybody was on Western Michigan too until I released the play, and then later on in the week, more people followed me when they looked at the actual stats, and the line went down a couple of points. But we'll have to see. But, yeah, Toledo's on my short list at this point.
But before we exit the MAC here, and I do want to talk about one NFL game with you to finish up the segment, the next time Akron has the audacity to ask me for money, because you and I both Akron grads, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to handle that situation yet, but if you want my money, don't look like shit against UMass.
Well, actually, for people who follow me on Twitter, I put out a spite bet on that game. I said, this is crazy. I said, there's no way Akron should be favored in this regard. So I got, I think, plus 280 back on UMass. So I actually have a little bit of money here that I could donate this year to Akron. And, hey, if Akron's that bad every week and I could take advantage of going against them, sure, I'll send some money in.
I would send some money with the note that says, make sure this goes to the soccer team, because the football team, sure as hell isn't worthy of it right now. Although, what, the football team might need it. I don't know. Maybe they got to start they got to get some better bag men down there in the rubber city. They got to start paying off some of these recruits a little bit better and actually get some talent there in town. In any event.
Yeah, they're all going to California now.
Yeah, right. In any event, we'll stay local here, and we'll talk about one NFL game with you here, Brian, and let's try that again. We'll fast forward all the way to Monday Night Football here. The Browns and the 49ers. And a lot of people breaking limbs, jumping off the Browns bandwagon as quickly as they possibly can. And then last week, the Browns go and beat the Ravens outright and really dominated that game for all intents and purposes. Now they go on the road, Monday Night Football against the 49ers. We're coming off of a bye. 49ers, a 3.5-point favorite, just about market-wide, couple of fours out there as well.
Yeah, I was one of those jumpers. I like Cleveland. I wasn't ready to buy on them yet, but the way they'd looked the last couple of weeks, it was sickening. And we've seen how the Cavaliers have looked the last couple of years without LeBron. That's the way it looked for Cleveland for me. And it was frustrating. But, yeah, they played well last week. But keep in mind, I liked Baltimore to win this division coming into the season. I originally was sour on Baltimore. And the more I read, the more I saw, the more I liked Baltimore. But keep in mind, that Baltimore pass defense has really been bad lately. And the Browns took advantage of that. San Francisco with an extra week off is a nice advantage here. Cleveland coming off of that big divisional must-win game. I wouldn't read too much into Cleveland based on that Baltimore defense. Like I said, I think Cleveland comes into this game. It was a team that a lot of people really liked coming into the season. People now have a buy sign on Cleveland. I don't. I think there's some value here on San Francisco, especially if you can lay the 3.5 here before it gets to 4. Bookmaker right now, 4 minus 105. The value, Cleveland got to travel all the way to the West Coast for a team who had the week off. San Francisco is one of those teams that I thought was a little overrated coming into the season, but they've done nothing to discourage anybody. And I think there's some value on value on San Francisco here. Probably be a high-scoring game, but then again, Cleveland won't have that defensive backfield that Baltimore has, and so we'll see how it goes. But I never thought I would say this, but it'll be nice to not have Cleveland on a primetime game, because there's other teams that I'd much rather see on a daily basis play these games than Cleveland. But first time I've ever been able to say that for 20 years. But yeah, I lean with San Francisco here.
I like San Francisco a little bit here too. I mean, that week 1 game where Jimmy G kind of struggled a little bit there against Tampa Bay, come to find out that, despite what the stats would show from last week's game, that Tampa Bay defense is pretty improved with Todd Bowles. So I give San Francisco a little bit of a pass there. Also the long trip out to Florida, dominate Cincinnati, and they dominated that box score against Pittsburgh too. They turned the football over way too much. They should have won and covered that game comfortably. So if the turnover issues are fixed, and it's obviously a big if here coming out of the bye week, could be a tough spot for Cleveland, who, by the way, then hosts Seattle the following week, a Seattle team on extra rest because they play Thursday Night Football this week. So not only are the Browns in a little bit of a tricky spot this week, I think next week at home, against the Seattle team a lot of people don't really like very much. I think that's a good spot to fade Cleveland. So I don't know if I'll be on San Francisco here, but I hope the Browns win outright and I get some extra value to fade them October 13th in a tough spot against Seattle.
That is something that could set us up with a pretty nice number.
Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. What's going on over there right now, man?
It's video day on Wednesdays. I'll be heading in for videos. Just want to let everybody know, been on fire in college football. 15-1 the last 2 weeks. 15-1. I've got 2 plays up, one in Conference USA, one game up in the Big Ten right now. Still working on the card for this upcoming weekend. But this is about as hot as you get. And a lot of people like to ride hot streaks. So if you're one of those guys, go over and pick up our plays right now over at wagertalk.com. Still working on the card. I gave you my baseball play for today. I'm going to play Tampa Bay. Still working on hockey and weekend football. Looking for another huge weekend once again.
Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com, at BLeonardSports on Twitter. Bryan, enjoy the Knights game tonight. Have a couple adult beverages for me, and we'll talk to you again next week.